For what?
Hey everyone, is it still morning? All right, so I've got a presentation here. I'm actually not going to be, I'm going to show sort of an overall landscape, a little bit on video, but not so much on video. But I think it's good to see sort of an overview of how everything is in Asia-Pac at the moment. So digital matters. And we step back and we say, why does digital matter? Right? Digital matters because it's a media. Right, so the internet, everything, it is a media. And I know you guys are from the media industry. I used to be at Discovery Channel and all that stuff. But it is truly a media. And you see some stats here yesterday. Synovate showed some stats. So I'm going to show you a bit more stats as well. In terms of how does online stack up to traditional media. These are some Nielsen numbers. So the internet, you see there, it's grown. This is from 2007 to 2009. So it grew from 58%, 63%, 65%, and it keeps on growing. And various other, traditional media, television, radio, newspapers kind of stay pretty much the same. In Singapore, time spent online. This is a Synovate PAX study, and I'm sure in the broadcast industry you're very well familiar with the PAX studies. And in Singapore, people aged 25 to 34, 29 hours. That's 61% of the time spent during the week. Top middle management, 59%. University degree above, 60%. All right, so people are consuming, content online. So this is a developed market. So how does it look in another market? Similar study in India. Online takes up roughly 20 to 23%. It's less so. TV is still strong there, but people do consume internet, especially in the urban areas and the big cities. So it is a media where people consume content. And who are these people? This is a view of the internet growth in the last year, from December 2009 to December 2010. Worldwide, the internet population has increased by 8%. This is home and work users. Mobile is another whole different sector. And if you look at this, Asia-Pac has grown 6%. That's a huge increase, about 30 million people. Europe has also grown a big chunk as well, North America. But at this point, Asia-Pac represents the biggest region for online users. And Europe has grown last year because of Russia. And everyone else in North America is pretty much flatlined. And these people consume content. How much time do they really spend? So these are our numbers in terms of by market. Total unique visitors, 300 million people in China, so everything in China is huge. Followed by Japan, 73 million people, India, South Korea, so on. And that's in thousands, right? So 304 million people. This is in millions, so that's 223 million minutes, billion minutes. And total page views, 329 billion pages, right? So on an average, if you take 329 divided by 304, that's about 1,000 pages a month. And you look at that metric directly, you see Japan is actually quite high in terms of pages per person. You look at Taiwan, Korea is actually really high as well, right? Stuff roughly 4,000 pages per person. And what kind of content do they consume? What category of content do they consume? So we look at by market. So in Indonesia, these are we categorize everything. So social network, search, all the way down to TV, in terms of what they consume. And the gray is the worldwide average. And it's what we index everything on. You see the index number of 128. So Indonesia, social networks. I love social networks. It's one of the highest penetration for Facebook in any market. So roughly 90% reach of the audience there. Search is still the same. So what we notice is social networks, photos, and blogs really have a correlation. People take pictures, they blog about it, they post it up, and it's on their Facebook. It's on a lot of things they do. Similar thing in Malaysia as well. Social network, blogs, photos. The indexes are quite high. Banking's okay. Instant messenger is quite good. Retail is low. It's another thing you see in these markets as well. The whole e-commerce, retail, visitation sites are still indexing below the US and the European markets. In the Philippines, again, photos, social networking, and instant messenger. Instant messenger is still pretty popular there. In many cases, the Facebooks supplant a lot of instant messenger usage, but not in all markets. They're still tied a lot to the MSN and the Yahoo messengers. Vietnam, it's instant messenger and news. Facebook is banned, blocked, right? So the local sites that do social networking don't, go up that far. They don't really get that penetration, the zings and stuff. Vietnamese consume a lot of news content. And you're wondering why? Well, I was there recently and I was like, well, not that much else to do in the evening. They can watch TV and that's kind of limited in terms of what they can get, right? And they can't all subscribe to pay TV, right? So they go online and the news there, they sort of look, they tend to look at all the news sites or more than one news sites, whereas most other countries, people have a brand, a news brand that they particularly stick to, whereas the Vietnamese tend to jump everywhere. Singapore, travel is a highlight. Instant messenger is still there. Photos. It makes sense, right? Everything you do, you're leaving the country, right? You travel more than 1 hour, you're outside of the country, right? So travel is a really high category. Business, finance, and news is key in Hong Kong, right? It makes sense. They're very much, after looking at the bank accounts and playing with stocks and things like that. And anything else, they're pretty much standard. So, these people, billions and billions of people, consume hundreds of millions of people consume content. So digital matters because it's a media where people consume content and advertisers advertise. And this is where it gets interesting. What's the advertising sector like? Click. This is a chart of, on the left side here, total ad spend worldwide. Above there is brand marketing. Below is direct response, 68 billion. So it's roughly 63% spent on branding and 37% on direct. This is digital. In digital, it's 23% spent on branding and 77% on direct. So digital has been used for direct marketing, primarily. The brand dollars are not here, right? That's one of the key things that this industry has to change. Why did we, go for direct response? From day one, us digital marketers, agencies, everybody's always said click. We rely on the click. Everyone wants a click. They want an ROI based on the click. That click from that one person does not represent that brand impression on the other 999 people. And click-through rates across the world are decreasing. And this is by click-through rates by market. You see Hong Kong there, Singapore's, India. Malaysia's love to kick, 0.3%. But as there's more media, more pages, there's more inventory out there. People don't just start clicking more because they're viewing more pages. So that click-through rates will keep on going down. So we need new brand metrics. or an old one. Right now, the digital sector uses CPA, click-through rates, impression, PPC, pay per lead. Where's reach frequency? Everybody in digital hates reach frequency because it's so old media. But we're at the allocation stage for a brand campaign, right? Everything's decided based on GRPs and reach frequency, and unless digital can talk about reach frequency at the planning stage, the money won't go there. Right? Your digital gets the leftovers and the direct response dollars. So with that, I'm going to leave you with a video. I hope it plays. Sound? Come on, get up. Who is in digital?
Show you the money.
Oh, no, you can do better than that, Jerry. I want you to say it what you would mean it, brother. Hey, I got Bob Sugar on the other line. I better hear you say it.
No. Show you the money.
Not show you. Show me the money.
Show me the money.
Yeah. Louder.
Show me the money.
I need to feel you, Jerry.
Show me the money.
Jerry, you better yell. Show me the money. Show me the money. You love this black man. I love this black man.
I love black people. I'll stop there. Yep, so that's it. Thank you very much. And
Thank you so much, Joe. Show me the money. Show me the moves, man. Fantastic. We'll have to all do it together, guys. Thanks so much for that valuable data, Joe. That really is very interesting insight into Asian consumers. Now I'm going to introduce our moderator today and the rest of the panel, who, by the way, backstage have quite happily decided that they're going to be called the original cast of Hangover 2 for reasons that you all know from last night. Please let's welcome first David Ketchum, Chairman, Asia Digital Marketing Association. David, if you would please come out, and the rest of the panel to follow up on building a brand through digital community, Jordan Koo, Media Mind Technologies Limited, Nick Seckhold, Mindshare, Andrew Tu, Connect Asia, and of course, Joe Nyan's right here, and he is with Comscore. Hi, guys.
So show me the money. We're going to start out this panel by asking how many people in this audience control budgets, like real advertising, marketing, show me the money budgets. Raise your hand. This panel is all about you. I used to be a marketing director myself and still think like one. And when I look at the growth of social media particularly, but also some of those internet stats and those ad numbers, I think, what is all of this phenomenon about for my brand? At the end of the day, you can show me a lot of communications outputs. How many click-throughs did you get? What were the impressions? How many people joined my Facebook site? But what's the business outcome, right? What's that really about? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, about how to build real business value for brands online. And some of those outcomes that might be desirable would be something like a net promoter score that moves in terms of the saliency or relevancy of your brand. It might be a sale. It might be an e-commerce transaction. All different ways to monetize. And as Joe's data showed, social media, and if you lump in photo sharing and everything else with it, huge phenomenon. And as marketers, how do we harness this medium and actually build our brands? And also for the folks in this room, how can you be part of this ecosystem and tap into the business model of marketing? We have one little ground rule for today's panel. You may not agree with each other. So we have a great panel today, with Nick working on the agency side directly with brands, Joe, the data and insight person, Jordan, from the platform and publishing side, and Andy is just Andy, if you know Andy. No, longtime industry veteran with kind of multiple perspectives. So I thought I'd start things out with you, Jordan. What's your take on this, coming from kind of the rich media background?
I think sound. Thanks, David. So I think as far as building a community is concerned, there are a lot of ways of doing it. And while I can think of many brands that doesn't do it right, there's really one particular brand that actually stood out for me in Asia, and that particular brand is AirAsia, right? And the reason why they are so successful is because I think it was pretty much a top-down approach. The owner of the company, the founder, Tony Fernandez himself is a big-time, social media advocate. He has like 70,000 followers on Twitter, and they really use social media as a means of communicating directly with their clients. So, the way I look at it, I think while there are many things that's wrong today with social media, as far as brands' approach on it, AirAsia will be a very good example how they do it. Right?
So why is that big community of value to AirAsia?
I think at the end of the day, the word of mouth marketing, all the positive brand buzz eventually translate to better sales, especially if you're talking about the business that they're in, which is low-cost carrier. There's a big perception while cost is great, it's cheap, but there are a lot of negative perception about it, like, flight delays, cancellation, and I think they use social media as a very strong CRM channel, right, which eventually leads back to sales.
So I was on a panel at a travel conference with the head of marketing for AirAsia, and I presented some numbers on traffic from AirAsia that came from Facebook, and it was roughly 17% that came from Facebook. And then the head of marketing came up after a couple presentations later, and as someone was asking a question, she says, "Oh, 17% of my revenue comes from Facebook." I said, "Revenue?"
Right. Well, I guess one thing, right, is just the easy pathway from social media to over to e-commerce, right? If you were, I don't know, looking at a washing machine and part of an online community about doing laundry, it would be many, many steps to buy a washing machine, whereas with airline tickets, pretty much frictionless. Yeah. The other thing that I think is interesting about AirAsia, as you said, coming from the top, is they actually manage their own community. They don't. They have considerable resources in house to own that asset rather than giving it off to somebody else.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, I think what AirAsia are doing well, particularly, is that they're engaging in dialogue before they're trying to push product. And they've kind of almost earned their right to then talk about product when they're engaged in their community in other ways. So they, the Facebook platform is a great one, as we all know, and they are able to ask questions and have polls, and they ask their users or they ask their audience for instant feedback, and that's I think one of the reasons why, and they action that feedback pretty much straight away if it makes sense. And I think one of the examples that Kathleen, who is the marketing director, said is about where should we fly next. If we were going to open a new route, where would that be? And they engage the community, their community, to come back, and then they end up flying there.
But what's the mechanic where you jump from engagement to actually making a more valuable brand? And the example that I saw recently was Oreo Cookies in the U.S. asking people on Facebook whether they like the cookie on the inside or the cream on the outside. Vote here. Right, and so 52 people said cookie and 48% cream, or the other way around, whatever. How do you turn that kind of engagement into a brand result?
Well, in terms of sales, I think.
Yeah, sales or improved brand relevancy or reaching a new target market, or right.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how you look at engagement. If we're talking about this backstage, but if engagement is sales or engagement is engaging or having a dialogue with a brand, it's two different things, and it's measured differently. But in the case of Oreo, what they're doing is that they're having this dialogue and they're creating an affinity with their user base, which hopefully translates into more cookies sold at the checkout. But they're spending the time asking their community, what they'd like to see, and being there and earning that right.
But sorry, I'm just gonna jump in here, Nick, because I think there's one phrasing you said there and said the term is "we hope," or "it may," because that actually brings back to the point we were talking about that I feel about the word engagement and engagement as a metric. Because then the engagement as a metric, just those three words, is bullshit. Because engagement actually without a business result means absolutely nothing. And it actually ties back to my personal belief is that a lot of marketers sitting out in the audience right now are saying, oh, social media is the new thing, it's the latest thing, it's the greatest thing in the world. But I'm afraid to try because I don't know how. And again, I'm going to use the word bullshit because it's absolutely not true. Because at the end of the day, what we do on digital marketing, and I've been doing this for 17, almost 20 years in digital marketing, nothing is new. anything we do with digital marketing is actually, there's nothing new in terms of the approach, the thinking, the results desired, and the results achieved in marketing. That's only major difference is that we do it via technology today. So going back to my point in your specific phrase of we hope, my key issue in terms of engagement is hope means nothing.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then. If there is no way of measuring a business outcome, would you then say to that brand, don't do it?
I would look at it a different way. I would approach it from the bottom up. Meaning, if the brand sit there and say, think about what the brand really want. You're right. There are certain campaigns, as we all know with brand advertising backgrounds, there are certain campaigns that just purely has a direct response, quantifiable result expected. However, in the digital space, my personal opinion, you still need something to measure against. So going back to your question, don't do it? The answer is no. But actually go from the bottom and move up, figure out exactly what you want. It could be, I just want 10 people to like me, right? And then work backwards from there, because end of the day, if you don't prove that you can get 10 people to like me, that CMO next year who's going to sign off more budget for digital may not.
So what do we think of Old Spice guy, right? Tired old brand, but from one of the world's great marketers, and the whole phenomenon. Was that, obviously we're not privy to the exact sales numbers, but was that an effective social media campaign?
My question is more, does it have legs?
Why do you always ask a different question when you get asked a question?
You said we can't agree with each other, right?
Yeah, no, does it have legs? Yeah.
I mean, I'm asking the audience.
I would say that with Old Spice, it's a branding campaign. They were rebranding themselves, and social was just, they had a creative that went viral. But it was ultimately a rebranding.
So to Andrew's point, they set a business objective and they achieved it as a way station to something else, right?
But just to add on to the question, right? Actually, it did actually translate in increased sales, significant amount of increased sales. I don't have the actual figure, but it actually met its business objective. And to add on to just disagree with Andy a bit with regards to the engagement, I honestly believe that there won't be an engagement with no value. If you have an engagement, there is definitely some tangible value to it, right? It's just a matter of, because the reality is, if your brand is not coming up with something that's worth engaging, people won't even engage with it at the beginning. So, there must be a real value proposition there. That's one. And the second thing is, I think Joe would agree with me in this sense, because we did a couple of different research, and we actually found out that when you actually have brand engagement, it ultimately leads to, increased purchase decision, aspirations and all these kind of things.
And I think that flows into direct response. I mean, we work with a lot of insurance brands, and we know that if the greater percentage of their first mentions or their greater percentage of consideration that they build through branding then translates into lower CPAs in the direct response space. So the two worlds are connected in that sense.
Yeah. What's a good example, either in insurance or elsewhere, that you've seen where you thought there was a valuable brand engagement?
In terms of the direct response link, or just?
No, either as relating back to the chart that Joe put up about either brand or direct response. We see a lot of the spending at the moment is looking at digital as a direct response medium. So either as direct response or brand.
I think
it's working?
It's an interesting question, and I don't think the two worlds should be separated. In my view, I mean, if an advertiser can afford it, they should be building brand via traditional channels and digital channels together. I don't think one coexists without the other. And then, from a brand engagement point of view, it really depends on, their business model and whether they're actually selling something and whether there is a direct response element to it that can be measured. So, I would say, create the brand, whatever that brand is, but maintain that brand. Like a great example out of the UK, which is coming in the insurance space, which you would say is an absolutely a direct response category, and most of the industry over there is built on that. But these guys are spent, because it's the RBS brand called Direct Line. I don't know whether anyone know about it. Probably the guys from the UK will know, the little red phone. And they've spent millions and millions and millions of pounds over the last 10 to 15 years creating a brand that they then mop up with all their direct response activity. And what we find is that their cost per acquisition or their cost per lead or cost per sale is much lower than their competitors or even their other portfolio of brands, Prudential and Churchill and so on, because they have a much higher degree of consideration or kind of advocacy, if you like. So yeah.
Well, and I hope we don't bore anybody in the audience here, but I want to take a little detour into the tech aspects of this discussion, right? Because the most simple model would be something where, and this is what people dreamed of in the early days of the internet, is you'd see a display ad, you'd get all excited, you'd click on it, and you'd buy a Dell computer, and the whole thing would take 30 seconds and be a direct value chain from computer up, image up to purchase. But actually, the pathway from through that funnel, from awareness to understanding to preference to action to CRM at the bottom, that funnel is a lot more complex, and that funnel isn't necessarily straight. And I guess, Jordan, you're in the rich media business, you're in the business of putting up images. How do you see that progression from learning about a brand or getting involved with it through to sale?
Yeah. So I think in terms of measurement, like I think what Joe mentioned earlier on, right, the click-through rate is no longer the only metric that you should consider looking at, because times have changed, especially if we talk about branding campaign. How do you use click-through rate, which is traditionally a DR measurement, to measure your campaign performance? So we actually did a research together with Microsoft and Comscore, actually talking about how engagement, right? And we have this measurement called dwell and dwell time. How, without even clicking on an ad itself, when you engage actively with the brand, how it actually helps you in terms of, from a brand recall all the way to purchase. And when we talk about purchase, we're talking about going to the store, pick up a product and buying it. So it actually impacts significantly, right?
And for the advertising agency, advertising industry, sorry, that better be true, right? Yeah. Because we're seeing lower open rates on email campaigns, we're seeing lower, click-throughs on online advertising. So in terms of that research, if indeed people are being exposed to brands and making purchases later on, that's an important piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, digital is the most measurable medium. It's like, what do you measure, right? That's always the trick. It's not the easiest thing to do. Money-wise, advertising dollars are actually from the CPG, right? The FMCG, fast moving. It's the P&Gs, the Unilevers, the Johnson Johnsons, the McDonald's. That's what advertising dollars. And those things you have to go to the store to buy, like Jordan says, right? You're not going to buy it online. So there has to be a way to track that. In the U.S., we're doing a lot of stuff. We tie up a database with I don't know if you've done Humvee. They have a point of sale panel. We tie up our panel with their panel, so we know what people. And digital is not just online, just
But
it's TV. We tie up TV and everything.
As Joe, consumer though, you're watching me, and I find that spooky, right? Like in that dwell time example that you talked about, you may not know who I am personally, but you know what type of person I am, and you can watch my cookie, and you can see that I visited the site, and then I came back to the site, and then I thought about buying, and then I didn't buy, and then a week later, when my wife told me to, I came back and I did buy. Right? There's a lot of other factors in the purchase decision, but isn't that a little bit spooky and intrusive in terms of privacy?
I think in terms of privacy, it's a very big word, right? And I think different markets actually portrays it differently. So I think what we have done as an organization is we work very closely with the IAB, and obviously the IAB works very closely with the FTC in the US. And a lot of these consumer concerns are actually addressed before anything can actually be done. But in markets like China, though, we're finding it a bit spooky because they are tracking technology out there that really drills down to your flash cookies and doing a lot more things that you will not be able to get away in the West or even in the other parts of the world. But then again, when you talk about China, they say it's China.
It's generational. Yeah. The younger generation don't give a crap, right? They're blogging, Foursquare, tweeting, doing everything, and they don't, they're just giving all information online. They don't care, and that's the future.
So we've had the C bomb and the B bomb in this presentation already. But I guess kind of moving on from that, what I find interesting in the numbers that you put up, Joe, was the scale. right? Because this gets interesting when the number of people online, exceeding, now Asia's number exceeds Europe, when the number of people online, and Jordan, you mentioned China, you get this fantastic dynamic that comes with scale.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things that I've been watching and very interested in is, there's a real sort of kumbaya nature to engagement. Like, let's join this community, and we're a brand, and we should be scared because we don't want to come in all commercial, and we'll get flamed by the webmaster, and everyone will kick us out of the conversation because we're boring and square and wear a wool 3-piece suit, where everybody else is wearing shorts and flip-flops in the community, that kind of thing. But I see a day coming where, when you have that kind of scale, somebody actually might want to buy an HTC Android phone, or they might want to buy, a Toyota. And when you get that kind of scale, then there's an audience that actually wants you to join the conversation in a way that's actually about products and services rather than just kind of joining the community. I just thought I'd put that out there. Does anyone have any thoughts there?
I think, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's a relevance for being in that space. And if you're a brand out there and you're trying to sell stuff, and your first entry into social media is to try and flog your product, you're not going to have very many fans, if it's Facebook we're talking about, for very long. So, I think brands need to really understand what it is about the social space that they want to get involved in. Why do they want to get involved in? What's the relevance for being there? Build up a relationship, and provide some useful things for the community, whether it's utility, whether it's whatever it might be. I mean, Starbucks and Oreos are a fantastic example of two huge global brands that are flying in the social media space. And Starbucks is doing coffee, but people engage with it. They've got a few million fans, or however many they've got, and they use that fan base very well, and they respect it. So I think once you've kind of got over that period and people realise that you're not there to flog stuff day in, day out, you're actually going to provide something that's useful, whether it be a free coffee, or we've just made some new bagels, or whatever it might be. I mean, there's a good example, just while I'm on that topic. There's a great example of a local bakery in London. The name escapes me right now, that is using Twitter to attract his user base. And what he does is, in every morning when all the new buns, I suppose, or bagels, or whatever it is, croissant, comes out of the oven, he tweets. And he's got loads of followers now, and all the people that are following go, right, they've just come out of the oven, they're freshly baked. Now, who would have thought that a local bakery would be using Twitter to help sell product? But he's providing that something that's useful, and he's getting engagement, he's getting sales.
And what about that Axe wake-up call service, right? I mean, it's one thing to tweet and say, fresh buns are ready, but it's a different one to wake people up.
Is there anyone from Unilever in the room? No? Okay, good. No, that's not true. Unilever are a client of ours, and what we're referring to is the Axe Wake Up Call app that was produced about a year ago, and basically what it was launched in Japan originally, and part of the research insight that came out, that the target audience, young men, use their mobile phones as alarm clocks. And we know that with the rise of mobile and the smartphones, and more of us are doing that, we're kind of an arm length away from our mobile phone at all times. So what happened is they developed an app which was basically called Axe Wake Up Call, and it made sense for the Axe brand because it's about sex and promiscuity and fun and all that kind of stuff. So essentially what had happened is they created this app where every day you sign up to this service, and every day a beautiful Japanese girl would kind of wake you up on your app, on your phone. And I haven't got the case study with me, but it was a fantastic example.
Act it out for us, please.
Sorry, what?
Act it out for us.
I can't speak Japanese, sorry. But it was a great example of a brand that provided something of use, provided a utility to a target audience, and then associated that brand with fun. All the results, as you can imagine, were really, really positive. But one of the most disappointing things about that, when we talked about this a little bit earlier, about brands that are new to content, that are new to digital, that are new to social media, especially from the traditional world, such as Unilever, the P&Gs and the J&Js, the way that they create their media plans, or the way that they buy their media, or their advertising, or whatever it might be, it's very much a promotionally led process. So they're launching a product, there's a big lead up, they launch it, they run it, and then it dies away, the budget finishes and they move on to the next thing, and it's very cyclical. Now the problem with that in the digital space, especially the social media space, is once you've engaged in that community and you've spent money, time and effort trying to recruit these customers, if you like, and create advocates out of them, once the budget stops, you're then out of there, which is a bit of a waste, which is exactly what happened with Axe. So while it was a fantastic campaign and it engaged and they had a couple of 100 million users, and the sales results went through the roof, they turned it off when the budget finished because that was the structure of their business. So for any marketeers out there, if you are trying to get into that space, I would say if you enter into social, you're in it for the long haul. Don't dip in and dip out.
But going back to that point there, one other thing I would add on to that is, of course, sustainability and having the legs is one key thing. Goes back to my point earlier, which is also make sure you program in what you want. What is your business objective you're trying to drive out of that thing? Because it goes back to my statement earlier, which is with Axe, yeah, sure, there's a challenge in terms of the planning cycles and so on. Money ran out, stop the campaign. However, if you were up front and set your objectives up front, you will probably be able to convince the powers that be, signs our checks, to actually put more money behind it. But it also, just last thing I want to say to this, it ties back to the statement of there's nothing we do in digital today that is new. Everything everybody said here today is based on the same approach, same thinking from brand, from direct, and in this case, from driving engagement.
Actually, not a lot of people know, but Andrew and Al Gore invented the internet some years ago together. At this stage, maybe just go out into the audience and see if there are any questions or if any of the comments from the panelists sparked off any ideas, thoughts, questions. Now you have light on you, it changes everything. No?
If there's none, I'd like to throw a little quiz to the audience, right? So obviously we know celebrity is really leveraging on social media in a very big way, and who wouldn't know Kim Kardashian today, if not because of Twitter and obviously her sex scandal. But today obviously the most popular Twitter celebrity, it's Lady Gaga. But what about Asia? Who do you get? Who do you think is the most popular Asian celebrity on social media?
Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber.
I'm a believer.
No, I'm talking about an Asian star, right? So you would assume it will be people like Jackie Chan,
Jet Li,
or or even like Gong Li or Aishwarya Rai. But the reality is, it's this girl by the name of anyone? No one? So there goes the 5 Series Beamer, which I wanted to throw away for this question. Yao Chen, right? She's actually a Chinese TV star, and she's got 6.6 million members on Weibo, and it's still going 7 million now on Weibo, and it's going up by the day. So I think before the end of the year, she'll probably overtaken Lady Gaga as the most followed celebrity.
And is that a phenomenon or a commercializable phenomenon, right? I mean, she's got more friends than there are people in Hong Kong, right? So
Yeah.
is she selling albums? Is she?
Well, China, 300 million people, is the largest internet audience of any country.
Yep. So I think definitely there is a lot of monetization opportunities. In fact, today a lot of celebrities are already charging for sponsored tweet for ranges from $1,000 to a few million, right? Depending on how big is your following. Even for us internally, we have one of my colleagues. He's a guy based in the UK. He's supposed to be our global digital evangelist. So he goes around the region, talk about digital, and he has a lot of followers. I think he has like about 5,000-6,000 followers. And every time when he goes to an airline and he doesn't get the seat that he wants, he will make a threatening comment and say, "Do you know how many followers I have on Twitter? If you don't give me the aisle seat, I will tweet about your company, and 5,000 people will tweet about it to another 5,000 people, and you do the math."
Digital extortion, there's a business model.
Exactly. And
like
half the time it works.
Yeah.
Half the time he gets escorted by security.
So-
I think extortion as a business practice been around for a bit too.
As we head for a close,
Nothing new.
I want to shift the mood and the discussion a little bit here and look towards the future. And given the number of hands that were up from people who could really show us the money, the assumption here then is that most of the rest of the people in this room are part of the overall digital ecosystem. As things become more and more digital, whether you're in the content business or you're a technology solutions provider, you work for an advertising agency, you own a platform, you're a broadcaster, whatever it is that your industry is or your profession. And I'd be interested to just talk as we head towards the close a little bit, to talk to each of you guys on the panel about, what do you see the future holding? And I'll go first. There are a couple of things that I think are quite top of mind. One is search is very much the hero in the equation at the moment. And if you look at the numbers of where advertising marketing spending is going, an inordinate amount of the budget is going to search, and paid search is in many ways the last step on the voyage to a purchase, right? So there may be all kinds of really cool brand marketing or experiential or social things that are going on, but there's that synapse or that jumping point to commerce that comes with search. And one of the things that I see happening is that search budgets won't go down, but people will look at a more integrated way of marketing, and there'll be a broader recognition that many of those things that happen a little further up the value chain are actually contributing to that final search result. That's just my perspective. Maybe Jordan, what's your view of the future?
I think social commerce it's already here in a big way, but I think
You mean S-commerce?
S-commerce, right? Another acronym to the growing digital jargon world. So, but I really think that S-commerce it's gonna be here, and the reason why I say it is because it's actually impacting the beauty about social media, or the scary thing about social media. It's actually impacting a whole new audience of online, right? So like the housewives, and like even for myself, my wife, she goes to Groupon like every day looking for nail and spa deals, right? And she's a fanatic, and she's got so many people, and that does the same thing. And some of my friends in China, what they do is that they will, during lunchtime, they will group around on the social e-commerce sites, and they will all make their purchase together. And so it's becoming part of a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And when it's a lifestyle, it's hard to change. It's like grabbing a coffee in the morning, right?
Right. Good. How about you? Joe, go ahead.
I just see as social media matures, brands will start using it as the front end of their CRM. Right? I mean, yes, there's going to be money and there's going to be tons of other things on it, but it is how they're going to use it to communicate with their customer base. In the back end, they have tons of expensive tools and all that kind of stuff. But how do they communicate at the front end? And I think that's social.
Okay. Andy?
Nick first, please.
The future. Wow.
Lunch is the future.
Yeah, in about 10 minutes. I think the mobile devices and location-based technologies will continue to grow, and things like I mean, some of it's already here. I just think the technology will get a lot more sophisticated. So, I mean, one of the greatest marketing tools or devices, depending on what side of the fence you sit on, whether you're a brand or a consumer, is the mobile phone. It's always on. It's always in your pocket. GPS now can locate you wherever you are, and I think the opportunity for brands in that space is quite immense. So I think and as the world becomes much more connected from an infrastructural point of view, all those sorts of things, and then as TV and the offline, the traditional channels become more digital, it then lends itself to a lot more connectivity of data. So ad serving into television now and connecting that into your search and social and digital and so on and so forth. And that presents a massive opportunity as much as it does a challenge.
I thought that was very interesting in the Google presentation, the keynote earlier, and also changing the definition of mobile, right? Mobile doesn't just mean taking your phone or your mobile device out. It's the tablet, it's the blurring of the lines of all the different media. Yeah. Andy?
I think my last statement, I guess I'll conclude that what I see is actually it's going to be a world of data, as you've said. Data will drive our behavior, rephrase myself. As a marketer, data will drive our behaviors, our thinking, our decision-making process, and the tools to manage that data will actually improve in time, very quickly actually, which then allows us to actually prove that the digital works and get more of the pie, if you will. And finally, and which goes back to the point of always setting that metric, regardless if it is social media, it is CRM, if it is search, to actually be able to quantify that result. And the last thing I want to say is, not only did I invent the internet with Al Gore, I also invented Facebook, and I will be taking them to court.
I hope you get at least 60 million. So
Thank you, at the right valuation.
great. So I think we'll wrap it up here, and hope you got some good takeaways from what we talked about today, and wanted to just thank our panels and look forward to the rest of the sessions. Thank you.
For long.